All right, guys. So I've had at least 3 calls in the last week from gym owners asking me about how to evaluate their gym for a sale. As in, they have people interested in buying their business and they're not quite sure how to price it or how to counteroffer someone who's making an offer to buy their gym. I'm not sure what's bringing on this increase in people looking to sell their businesses. A lot of these gym owners that are selling are people with second locations that they're looking to consolidate back into one because they're realizing that going wider wasn't the best idea because it's taking from their ability to go deeper on the one location. Or they are, people that have partners and they want to buy out their partner because the gym's doing well. We've had a lot of that with gyms that work with us start having some success with their systems and realizing they don't need the partner anymore, so they want to buy them out. And those have been a couple of the calls I've had recently as their reasoning. And there's also been people that are just ready to be done with it, right? They're ready to move on or whatever. And they're curious, how can I evaluate? And also really good use case here is like, there is a use case here for people that might want to build an equitable business that has enterprise value that maybe, maybe even smaller private equity or funds or firms or investors might want to buy, right? Because at the end of the day, small businesses of all types and all industries and all niches are getting acquired by like small funds all over the country, right? And these are people that are not gym people. They're people that are just looking to buy very good recurring revenue businesses, and they don't generally care what it is. They don't usually buy gyms because they're not, usually the KPIs and the metrics aren't there to support what they've defined as like a good model, right? They look for businesses that meet a certain model of like metrics in regards to recurring revenue and profitability. They basically want to know that if like we make an investment of a certain number of a year's worth of profit to acquire this company, if we were to give the current owner X amount of X multiplier of their annual profit to buy it from them, they want to know that that's going to sustain well beyond paying off that debt, essentially, basically, right? So how do we evaluate what a gym is worth? And there's all kind of conjecture on the internet. I've seen all kinds of experts like try to put these like really mathematical formulas together, and that's all great. And you probably still want to, when you go to finalize a deal, sit down with both your accountant and maybe even a professional business broker, because I'm not one of those, and like really get down into the nitty gritty of the down to the penny what it's worth. But after having built, sold, and exited companies myself, and also researched this at end, read all the books about it, also talked to many business brokers because I've had many clients who own gyms. I talked to the broker about certain things so they can help sell the business, and I've learned a lot about how they evaluate things and what actually gets a deal done. Right. And in short, it's actually very, very simple. 90% of it is going to be, for most businesses, the person that wants to buy the business, they usually are looking at like a 3-year run out to like get to basically make a profit on the investment. Right. So if they're going to buy your business, they want to know in 3 years that they're going to be starting to make some dollars over what they paid you for the business. Right. So, what we call that, like, so basically it's based on like your EBITDA, right? And EBITDA is like this fancy word that confuses a lot of gym owners. I would say up until a couple of years ago, having been in business for almost 20 years myself, I still didn't really understand what the word EBITDA meant. And really all it means is like your profit after you pay interest and taxes on any debts you have and any like taxes owed and things like that, right? So like how much do you make there? And if you're like an S corp or an LLC, most of your money passes through. So it's not your personal taxes that you pay. It's like what taxes the business pays, which if it passes through, the business doesn't really pay much taxes because it passes through personally. So really it's just your profit, right? After everybody's paid. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because a gym owner will say, well, I make $100K a year. So the business makes $100K a year in profit, right? And this is where this is why a lot of gyms don't sell, because a lot of gym owners gyms run like sole proprietorships, right? They run by like sole proprietorships, or what we call a self-employed business, right? So basically what that looks like is the person who like owns the business on paper, they're just drafting all the cash out of the business's bank account to themselves. And essentially it's just a fund for them to like pay their bills, right? When real businesses, when they're evaluated, those are what the owner, who, if the owner is working a job for the business, if they are the CEO of the business, they take a salary, and then the business's profit is actually what they make over and above that, right? So, this is why a lot of small gyms don't sell for anything, because when a business broker or an accountant that works in the acquisitions goes to look at the business, they're like, okay, like this gym does $600,000 a year in revenue, right? and the owner pays themselves, it makes, but out of that 600,000, it makes 200K, but the owner's paying themselves 175K of that, leaving the business only 25K in revenue, in capital, right? And 25K a year in actual profit, right? Because when you look at the profitability of a business, it's not based on what does the owner make. In a sole proprietorship or a self-employed situation, sure, right? If this gym is your means to an end and it's your job in a sense for the rest of your life, then sure, right? But if you're actually trying to build an equitable business that you own, that is an asset, it has to make profit over and above all jobs being paid, right? So if you have, say your gym, you're small, say you're like a CrossFit affiliate or a jiu-jitsu gym or a boot camp gym, and you have 200 members and the gym is doing 200K a year, and you pay yourself 150K, and at the end of the year, the gym only has maybe 20K in its account, of which you go to spend on like upgrades, right? You go to spend on upgrades, really zeroing out the account by the end of the year. On paper, that's actually a break-even business, right? That's actually a break-even business because, and I guess it depends on you as the business owner. What roles are you still wearing? What hats are you still wearing in the business? Now, if you're completely hands-off, and like you don't work in the business at all, you don't do any sales, you don't do any marketing, sales is done by someone in-house, that's not you. If marketing is done by someone in-house or outsourced, that's not you. Or by another company, like Big Little Gyms, we're that person for a lot of gyms that we work with. If operations is run, you have leadership and an operator and a manager to make sure the classes are covered and the team is managed and the gym stays clean and all the wheels are turning every day. If you have that in-house and hired and paid for, and then you have all your implementers and your minions and your team, if you have all those in-house and you're not one day away from being called in to cover a class, if that's all covered and you're just paying yourself salary as essentially like just taking profit from the business, then that can be considered profit, right? Because profit is after everybody's paid to run the business, right? So if you're paying yourself 100K a year, but you are still essentially the operator, if you don't show up to, say you're not coaching classes, but you still, like, if there's no management besides you, then you're the manager, right? You're wearing that hat. Now that might be a great job, and you're no longer the implementer of the business. You're not turning the wrenches and flipping the burgers. You're managing everybody, and you might say, well, I'm the owner. It's like, well, no, actually, you're technically the manager, and if we were to remove you, like, there'd be no directive. There'd be no, like, people wouldn't start showing up. And that's very important to an acquiring party, right? Now, and here's the other thing, is it depends on your buyer, right? So it depends on your buyer heavily. If your buyer is someone just like you and they're unknowing to all this and they just really want the job of owning a gym and they want to be the CEO and be the manager, they might be okay with paying the multiplier of that profit, even though they're going to be buying a job. Because if they're smart, they wouldn't. If they're smart, they wouldn't. But if they are really, like, they never made 100K a year and they can buy a 100K a year job that happens to also be a business, but knowing that they're going to have to coach a dozen classes a week, manage all the people, make sure the gym is cleaned, handle the scheduling, the programming of the workouts, handle the billing and admin stuff. If they're moving into that job, they might be willing to pay, some multiplier of that, right? But if they're smart, if you really want to, like, open up the market of potential acquisition and, like, even possibly get a bidding war going for your business, which is the best thing you can have going, is 2 or 3 companies very, very interested in buying your company and saying, no, like, this is too good to pass up, I'm not letting them outbid me. And you hold the keys in regards to what you can ask versus, like, trying to negotiate up from the bottom. Then you really want to have everything hired out and it be completely turnkey and make it to where there's no key man risk, right? So key man risk is another huge, huge variable that in the acquisitions world, it's an actual thing. It's an actual KPI. They actually measure key man risk. So they're like, okay, how much of this company is really this person? And if we remove that person, what percentage of the company, how much does that company devalue because that person's no longer a part of the brand, right? And so when you're trying to position a company to sell, you want to eliminate key man risk, right? You want to eliminate key man risk as much as you can because like that can be a third or even half of the value of a company, right? And for gyms, especially like small community-based gyms, because the person who calls themselves the owner but is really working all these jobs and coaching and managing people they're also doing because you're also the person shaking hands and kissing babies, because you are the community liaison, which is a job in your business, and you're not detached from it, that devalues your company. And someone buying a business is going to be like really concerned about that. They're going to be like, well, if you go away, how many people are just going to leave because it's not the same thing anymore, right? So, and this can take time. And for a small business owner, this can be really challenging because they're like, well, if you're a really likable person, it's kind of hard. It's kind of easy to build a community because like you're really likable and people rather do business with people than companies, right? But this is where really good brand building comes in, even at a local level, of like building the mission, vision, and principles behind the brand and positioning yourself as the person who facilitates that, not the person who is it, right? Which can be rather challenging and gets into a whole world of like psychology and how do we position the brand between me and the customer, right? Which can be really, really challenging. But I'm just talking about these things because they're things to think about, that if you want to build the very best, most valuable business, because at the end of the day, reality is, and I know a lot of gym owners, thousands, I've worked with thousands, and I've been a 2-time gym owner. When I started my gyms, I was like, I would love to do this forever, and I want to have multiple locations, and I want to take over the world with my mission. And then after a decade of doing it, my phase of life had changed pretty greatly, and I was ready to move on, right? I didn't know a lot of the things I know now. I wish there was someone like me to tell me the things I knew now back in my first 5 years, because those first 5 years took a lot out of me. And by the time I got to year 10, I was like, I think I want to take the skills and things that I've learned and go do something else. Because I was just ready, right? And so, back then I wish I would have known those things, because, when I went to go exit my businesses, they were things that held me back. And the things I've learned now, as I've grown other companies of scale that are much bigger scale, that really people are taking interest in. And we even have people reaching out to us to say, hey, we're interested in buying you. We're interested in buying your business because we can see from afar that you have something valuable and scaling, and your stake in the local markets are increasing. And bigger businesses want to buy businesses where there's a lot of upward trajectory, but a lot of meat left on the bone. Because what big businesses can do, once there's very good brand recognition built and good goodwill and a lot of organic and a lot of word of mouth behind it, is they can just take what they have a lot of, which is money and people, and they can just stick it in that company and scale it to the moon, right? And a lot of people think small businesses can't take advantage of this positioning and position themselves as something that a company like that would want to buy. But they would be wrong, because it happens all the time, right? Like, it happens with like dry cleaning businesses, right? There's literally like hedge funds that buy up dry cleaners, right? There's hedge funds that buy up dentist offices. There's hedge funds that buy up all kinds of small businesses, because as long as those small businesses meet a certain set of KPIs, then they'll buy them, because and they'll probably ask the owner to stick around. If there is some key man risk, they might ask you to stick around for 6 months to a year. Right? Which is the right thing to do anyways, because at the end of the day, if you're selling the business and you generally care for the business, you want to see it go on. You also want to do right. And plus, there's typically sometimes holdback in the deal where they're like, if there is key man risk, they'll say, okay, cool, I'll pay your price. The business makes $200K a year. And I'll talk about in a second how we get to an evaluation. The business makes $200K a year, and so we're going to offer you $600,000, or you're going to say, I want $600,000. They might say, okay, well, if you're just going to run away, we're going to only offer you half that. But if you want to stick around, if you want that full amount, you have to stick around. So we're going to ask for you for a year, and we're going to give you, say, $400,000. The other $200K is due at the end. And then it really just depends on their terms. And you want to be really careful with holdback, because in the holdback agreements, they'll often stick things in there to try to trap you so they don't have to pay it. It's really common for, especially like people that do this for a living, like private equity and acquisition companies, to give half up front or some percentage up front and say the other half is due after the holdback period. And in the contracts, they'll say the company has to hit these numbers, it has to hit these things. And so they're tethering performance, which sometimes they can disrupt. They might base it on profit, but then the private equity company might decide to spend all their profit on marketing that year, and you don't make any profit, so you get screwed. Meanwhile, you stuck around for a year to help it out. So you really want to be careful of that. Now, evaluation, which is the thing you guys all really want to know. We can break it down to a simple thing, and that's that most people who buy a business want to make profit in year 3 in 1 day, right? So after we establish what is profit, what is EBITDA, and it's not your paycheck as the running person who runs the gym, it's what does the business actually make after everybody's paying, still including yourself, because if you leave, someone else has to work those jobs, right? So if you have someone that wants the job, then you could probably position this as like profit, even though it's really a job, and get 3x, right? Now, how can it be worth more, right? Like, so how can I get 5x or how can I get 7x? Well, it depends on scalability, right? So it depends on scalability to a great degree. If the gym's full and maxed out and it can't get any bigger, and the person buying it is going to be like, okay, I'm just buying this as a revenue stream, as a profit stream, and my job is to keep it going, right? Because we can't get any more people. But if they know the gym can still double in size, then, and they know that the tools are already there to do it, and all they have to do is inject cash or effort or work or time, then they will buy the business because their goal is going to be to like get back what they spent to acquire it in 1 year. This is what private equity companies do. This is what acquisitions companies do, is they'll pay a 5 or 6 or 7x multiplier for a business, like a tech company, for example. But they'll say, okay, cool. Like, we just let it run as it is. We make our money back in 5 years, but we don't want to make our money back in 5 years. We want to make it in 1 year. So does this company have everything it needs to just put cash into marketing? Because that's the easiest thing, right? We just need to multiply if we know every customer costs $200 and we just need more customers, then we're just going to spend X times $200 to get the more customers faster than the 5 years, right? And that's why it's really important to be able to show someone what your cost per acquisition is, right? You have to be able to show the new buyer, like, hey, if you want more customers, all you have to do is spend $200 to acquire one. And here's how you do it. And I already have the systems in place. I already have Facebook ads running and a playbook for that. Maybe you work with Big Little Gyms, right? Maybe you're a client of Big Little Gyms and you have those things for them in place already because you worked with, consulting / coaching / systems company like ours to get those things in place. And now they're like, sweet, we have everything we need here. All we need is cash, right? So that's where systems get important from a marketing perspective. Is like, is there some marketing systems in place to scale this business that the new buyer could just inject cash in? Now, here's what's really cool about this and why even someone who's not trying to sell their gym, or maybe is considering selling their gym, but it may not happen, where this is motivating and where this is important is this is how you should build the business anyways. Because say you're tired of it, right? I've gotten tired of businesses in the past, but say no one wants to buy it, or you can't buy it, or you don't want to go through the effort of buying it, you're just going to keep it because it makes good money, right? You're like, hey, I like what it does. I like my gym. I don't really want to sell it. It makes good money, but I don't want to do it every day. Okay. So what you do then is the same thing you would do to sell the business, right? You would essentially staff it out with really, really good people. You'd work in a leadership for a little while to mentor those people, right? Probably takes a year or two to get the right people in place. You would get all the marketing systems in place so they run somewhat automatically, and you know your cost per acquisition, so you're just feeding cash into it like an investor. It's kind of like what Rich Dad Poor Dad, he has what's called the cash flow quadrant, and on the far end of the cash flow quadrant, where you really want to be in business eventually, is as an investor. And you can turn your own business into an asset that you just invest in because all the pieces are there. And then what you do is you just take cash and you just say, okay, how much does the business need to grow this month and make more cash? Because I want to make more cash. Okay, cool. So it needs 10K more to run some ads to get, 50 more customers. And then as long as you know you have the system to churn out customers at that price, you just do it and scale. And then in the month 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're realizing that profit gain because you know what it costs to acquire a customer, and you know what a customer is worth to your business. You know the business is worth, a customer is worth $10,000 lifetime value, but you just need to spend the $200 to acquire them and do the work and have salespeople in place, right? So it's doing all those things. So it's really interesting that like the same things that you would build a business to sell with, the same set of criteria we talked about in this entire video, is the same things that would help you build like a really good business that even if you decided you didn't want to work in it one day, you're done working in it, you want to go do something else. You're like, hey, this gym's great. It makes me $100K a year, but I want to go do something that makes like $500,000 a year now that I have this padding, I have this room to take on risk. I want to go do something else because I'm ready. And that happens with a lot of small business owners. They learn how to build good business. And they're like, I want to go do something bigger. That's what happened with me. Well, actually, I had a bigger business, then went back to a smaller business, and then went back to a bigger business. So like I've kind of gone in and out. But once you have that skill set of knowing how to build the pieces and assemble the pieces like Legos to build the machine, you can kind of see it in all things. And you're like, it's like you have this mythical power in your hand that can turn like mercury into gold, right? It's like a type of alchemy, right? It's like a type of alchemy where like, okay, I can take this set of people and systems and tools, and it's cranking out 10x to some of its parts every month, right? And that is business, right, guys? So there you go, guys. That's essentially how you would evaluate business. That's the short of it. Of course, like you could spend, 3 months working with accountants and business brokers and people who evaluate businesses for a living to get down to like the dollars and cents of it. And that's probably what you'll do if you go to actually sell a business, because anybody who buys a business at like a professional level, not just some like gym guy who wants to buy the gym off you because he wants the job, but any like fund or like someone who's going to pay a big multiplier, they're going to do what's called due diligence, and they're going to look into all these things. Because what they do for a living, their job is to poke holes in things. And if you want to prepare, what you're going to feel like in that process is that they're trying to take advantage of you. They're going to be like, oh, they're trying to devalue my thing. And you might, if you're the type of person that isn't good about keeping things objective, and even if you are, you could feel like they're trying to say that your life's work is terrible, when in reality, they're just trying to make sure they make a good decision. Because at the end of the day, most of businesses that are trying to acquire you, yeah, would they love a deal, right? They would, right? So they're going to look for opportunities if they see them, if you give them to them. And it's really your fault for not being prepared against someone who knows better. But more than anything, like I've found that people who make offers to buy businesses, they genuinely want to buy a good business, and they genuinely look like when they're going to buy it, they're not looking to do a hostile takeover. That's like a thing you see in big like merger and acquisitions that is really only made public because the few times it happens, it goes south. But most people are buying people, right? If they're buying your business off of you, your life's work, and they see how much you care about it, they know you're probably going to be around. They know you're probably going to want to see it do well. And if both parties are well-intentioned, those end up being the best deals anyways, right? You get paid, you're super happy. And what's really cool is like once you sell a business to someone who is a perennial business buyer and it's gone well for them and it's gone well for you, you trust each other. And that can be a connection that helps you make millions of dollars for your lifetime, because like now you have an outlet for like building something, enjoying building it, putting the pieces together, and someone who can help you get it acquired when you're ready to move on to it or acquire it themselves. So I think this is super valuable knowledge for any gym owner. If you found this video valuable, of course, hit that like button, comment, like, subscribe, do all the things that social media says you're supposed to do if you like something. Kind of helps me know if it was valuable and if I should talk more about this kind of stuff, because I get asked this stuff a lot. And then when I look out in the general sphere of just business in general, not even just like gym ownership, the gym ownership world, I don't generally see a lot of content about this, like this type of stuff, probably because not a lot of gym owners get there, or even know how to proceed. And a lot of people can't quantify how to take the real big business advice that talks about this stuff and apply it to their small business. So I really hope that was helpful for you guys, and that it applies and you can kind of see how you can best position your business. Because what I would love to see you guys do is build a really, really good business, love doing it, make money, because if you make money, you're going to be happy and you're able to take care of your family. And it doesn't make sense to go and take care of everybody else in the world and help them live better lives and not live a better, more fruitful life yourself. And then also when it's time to move on, because you're going to evolve and you're going to learn things about yourself through business. You might decide that like, this isn't what I want to do anymore. I know, because I moved on and there was a time in my life where I never thought I would. And, luckily having sold some businesses before, I'm like, even though I know I don't want to sell this now, I might in the future. And honestly, if I want to love it for as long as possible, I should build it the same way either way. I should build it in the way that if someone else was going to acquire it, I'd also want to keep it, which makes it really, really hard to sell, because it's hard to sell a business that is likely going to pay you what you want to be paid for the next 3 to 5 years. It's the same reason someone else would want to buy it from you and just pay you all that money now and say, we'll take it from here. Right. Essentially. So hopefully that's valuable. Again, actually, I know it's valuable. This is really valuable advice. This is advice that has served me well and has benefited me to the tune of 7 figures. So it's really valuable, and you should apply it. And yeah, you guys have a fantastic day. Bye.